Welcome to Jesus Christ Prison Ministry and another video Bible study. Our topic, Matthew, the Mission, Part 3. We have been studying the mission of Jesus. He came from heaven not to condemn, destroy, and seek revenge for the wrongs this planet had committed against the kingdom of God. No, his mission was to teach this rebellious planet how to again come back into harmony with the kingdom of God. This one planet was so lost and confused, it would not have understood God's right to destroy it. The people first had to learn what love was and how the kingdom of God operated. Then, God would have the right to destroy those who refused to come into harmony with that kingdom of love. In a sense, the church that claimed to be so favored by God was actually using the name of the Lord in vain. It had no idea how to serve, honor, or respect that name. It was all about church rules and church opinions. Anything to put on a show and look righteous to the church. God was not their God. No, church was their Lord, their God, and their Savior. But Jesus came to teach a new principle that had nothing to do with show or church, only truth. A truth that transformed the character and made a man live in obedience to the Ten Commandments as a way of life, not a show. You know that our ancestors were told, don't use the Lord's name to make a promise unless you are going to keep it. But I tell you not to swear by anything when you make a promise. Heaven is God's throne, so don't swear by heaven. The earth is God's footstool, so don't swear by the earth. Jerusalem is the city of the great king, so don't swear by it. Don't swear by your own head. You cannot make one hair white or black. When you make a promise, say only yes or no. Anything else comes from the devil. We do not realize the holiness of God. We have never been trained or given living examples of the reverence God is due. In my own life, I am searching to find that greater reverence and holiness God desires of me in His presence. His name should be used with great respect and care, but we throw it around and use it so commonly that we do not realize the magnitude of the wrong. Again, this is where church becomes so deadly and anti-Christ. We have allowed the church system to sanitize our whole understanding of Christianity. It is all about selfishness and I want. God does not ask us to go to church. He doesn't ask us to sit in church. He commands us to get off our behinds, stand up, and go teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. Matthew 28:20. Church is literally killing us. We make oaths in so many ways. All of it is an attempt to prove how reliable we are, how sure we are, how righteous we are. Yep, you can depend on me. How many have made an oath to their church? No different than a Catholic or an Islamic. But the Bible is very plain that we have no idea what the next hour will bring, let alone the next day, week, month, or year. God holds your life in His hands. Yes or no is all we need to say. Our only oath and loyalty is to be to Jesus and Jesus only. If you claim to be a Christian, but are not living the perfect, sinless, and commandment-keeping life that Jesus lived, you are giving a false oath to the world. you are living a lie. You are breaking the third commandment. You can claim to be a Baptist, a Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, evangelical, or any of the thousands of religions in the world. But in a court of law, you cannot claim to be a Christian unless you are living as Jesus lived. Perfect, sinless, and commandment-keeping. Jesus is holding court right now. Those who claim the name without living as Jesus lived will be found guilty of lying, stealing, committing adultery, and murder. If you break one of the commandments, you break them all. You know that you have been taught an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to try to get even with a person who has done something to you. Here again, the Pharisees were taking a text out of context. They loved to give an eye for an eye to prove how strict they were in keeping God's laws. They were trying to prove how religious, how righteous they were. Like those who burn abortion clinics, hate gays, and kill child molesters. They couldn't wait to find an excuse to stone someone or hang them on a cross to prove their loyalty to God. But it was all selfishness, pride, and ego. It was all taken out of context. They forgot mercy. The chapter, eye for eye, comes from Exodus 21. It is simply a chapter on justice and compensation. God is a God of justice and compensation. He demands justice from us and in us. It is revenge we are not to take upon ourselves, as God said. But I tell you not to try to get even. God will do the avenging. But justice and compensation are works of righteousness. In Exodus 21, verses 26 and 27, we find the practical illustration of how to put that justice to work. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys it, he shall let the slave go free because of his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his slave, male or female, he shall let the slave go free because of his tooth. The person was not to turn around and take the eye or tooth of the one who took his. However, there was justice to be done. As a slave, they were to be freed. The whole chapter explains the eye for eye concept. But we love to take texts out of context and hold them up to prove how righteous we are, how zealous for God we are. This can be done with food, clothes, drink, church-going, Bible reading, and prayer, etc. All done for show, without a bit of God's justice or mercy in it. When someone slaps your right cheek, turn and let that person slap your other cheek. If someone sues you for your shirt, give up your coat as well. If a soldier forces you to carry his pack 1 mile, carry it 2 miles. When people ask you for something, give it to them. When they want to borrow money, lend it to them. Here again, we find Jesus contradicting the misguided attitude of the church's eye for eye. Here, Jesus is showing that we are to love those who hate us. Jesus wasn't talking some theological point or abstract concept. They slapped Jesus in the face. They hit him in the face. They spit in his face. They took his clothes and divided them up among themselves. They beat him and whipped him until the blood flowed from his lacerated veins. He hung naked on the cross for most of the day in front of thousands of people. But in all of it, he did not seek revenge. With one blink of an eyelid, he could have wiped them all out and gone back to heaven. However, he knew that someday justice would be done. But now, He took every indignity they could hurl at him and loved them in return. Then he looked up to heaven and asked his Father to forgive them, for they did not know what they were doing. And that is the point. They didn't know what they were doing. That is why Jesus had to lay down the example first. Then they would know what they were doing and could be condemned. They would have no excuse for sin after Jesus. Jesus is our example. Is your church going producing that behavior in you? Maybe it is time to get out of church and fall at the feet of Jesus and develop his character of love and forgiveness. You have heard people say, love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you to love your enemies and pray for anyone who mistreats you. Then you will be acting like your Father in heaven. He makes the sun rise on both good and bad people, and he sends rain for the ones who do right and for the ones who do wrong. Oh, the hate that comes this way. People who love their church, like the Jews, hate those who tell the truth about their church. It's like putting a dagger through their hearts. Again, that is why the Pharisees and the Jews of Christ's day hated the Christians. That is why they put Christ on the cross. It all had to do with their church. Jesus showed us how to love those who hate us. I pray for those who write such hate against me, this ministry, and Jesus. Their church has become their God, and anything that would show them the truth fills them with rage. If it were not for the laws of the land, they would act as the Catholics acted in putting to death those who talked against their church. But love, they have none, since love comes from God. They have church, but they do not know God. I feel like a man at times on a rack after hateful letters are sent to me. I am stretched and lashed, pulled apart, and not loved. They just can't stand the fact that I teach obedience to Jesus and not their church. That I listen to Jesus and will not bow down to their church wisdom. They gnash their teeth at me and act just like those in the Bible who hated Jesus. Having eyes, they do not see. Having ears, they do not hear. If you love only those people who love you, will God reward you for that? Even tax collectors love their friends. If you greet only your friends, what's so great about that? Don't even unbelievers do that? But you must be perfect like your Father in heaven. My sister will have nothing to do with me, yet her whole life is bound up in her church. She greets her friends and loves her church and pagan family members. She invites her friends over so they will invite her back. Each year the church gives her and others like her a special dinner for all their work in the church. If you pay enough money, you too could have a special dinner. However, after church on Sabbath, it is time to go to the ball games. But she hates me and will not call me or step one toe on this property. Church is destroying the world. She thinks this ministry is a cult for teaching the teachings of Jesus. And those who would be workers together with God must strive for perfection of every organ of the body and quality of the mind. True education is the preparation of the physical, mental, and moral powers for the performance of every duty. It is the training of body, mind, and soul for divine service. This is the education that will endure unto eternal life. Going to church is not striving for perfection. When you do good deeds, don't try to show off. If you do, you won't get a reward from your Father in heaven. When you give to the poor, don't blow a loud horn. That's what show-offs do, and the meeting places and on the street corners, because they are always looking for praise. I can assure you that they already have their reward. When you give to the poor, don't let anyone know about it. Then your gift will be given in secret. Your Father knows what is done in secret, and He will reward you. That is another problem with church. Nothing but a bunch of show-offs. The minute people begin to group, sin is not far behind. As the population grew before the flood, sin became rampant and was destroyed. At the time of the Tower of Babel, the people refused to be obedient to God in dispersing around the world. They decided to congregate and make a name for themselves. The purpose was to control. Only God is to control us. No man, church, or denomination is to have any control over another human being. Therefore, God destroyed their church and changed their language and dispersed them around the world. I believe that at the same time that God changed their language, He also modified their genetic code in order to bring about the different racial configurations we have today. This was to ensure separation. This separation was not built on prejudice or inferiority of one race to another. It was simply to keep sin from multiplying so quickly. Abraham lived apart from the nations around him. He knew and understood the dangers of grouping or congregating. His nephew Lot did not mind grouping and ended up almost losing his life. However, he lost everything of this world's goods. The Israelites were not to group. They were given land that allowed them to live very separate lives within their clans. This was for the spiritual good of the people. When they began grouping and going to church, sin abounded. As each generation grew up, more and more gravitated to Jerusalem or the cities of power. After all, that was where the action was. Power was there. Who wouldn't want to be a part of power and action? But this was not God's plan. Eventually, the nation, centered on Jerusalem and the people, were no longer free to live for God. Ultimately, God had to destroy Jerusalem and the nations of Israel and Judea. Because of the tendency to group, congregate around religious facilities and organizations, the Christians were not commanded to group or start a church. Jesus did not command them to go and build churches. They were commanded to go into all the world, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. But again, within 100 years of that command, Christians began grouping. They began congregating. God allowed persecution after persecution to separate the Christians in order to keep them pure. But eventually, the church system won out for the majority. They adopted the pagan church system, and Christianity became pagan. It is so much easier going to church than going to Jesus and live as He commands. The same has happened with the churches of today. They have all followed the pagan Catholic system of church grouping and make it a hotbed of sin. They love to show off their cars, clothes, latest in electronics, education, degrees, and of course, their children. All of it is sin. The modern prophet of God condemns the churches of today. They have become nothing more than religious talent shows, seeing who can out-preach or out-entertain each other. Today, how easy it is to group. Not just in the physical context, but we also group electronically through our media and mail activities. We can block out everything that does not agree with our point of view, and we stop learning, testing, and obeying Jesus. But we become more enslaved to our church stars and big shots losing all sight of Jesus. I pray that you will take your eyes off your church and everything that comes out of it. Turn your eyes on Jesus. Open his word and sit quietly, reading, listening, and obeying. Thank you for joining me and Jesus Christ for another video Bible study.